Welcome to Vision 2222, the podcast where we explore the scientific, technical, social, and human changes that we might see if we were able to travel 2 centuries into the future. We interview leaders in science and technology and experts in business and the humanities to look into the possibilities of the future. Vision 2222 is the brainchild of Mikhail Gladkikh and his co-hosts Amanda Chadee and myself, John Marsh. I'm an administrator in a materials science department in a major research university in Houston, Texas, and I get a ringside seat into the amazing research into new materials that will enable us to thrive in the future. Our guest today is Wes Okeke, who is CEO of Fruition Technology Labs in Houston and is involved broadly across the venture community in Houston.
And I'm your co-host, Mikhail Gladkikh. I am a technologist. I'm specializing in 3D printing, digital supply chain, and in general, everything around Industry 4.0. Also in my spare time, I write science fiction.
And I'm Amanda Chadee, consultant and mentor early-stage startups in biological and life sciences. I specialize in business development and funding strategies to support early-stage startups in the big leap from lab discoveries to creating and selling a valuable commercial product. I'm so excited today to have Wes Okeke as our guest. He is the CEO of Headway Idea Labs in Houston, Texas. So Headway is a company that helps technology startups in their product development timeline, from developing a business model to accelerating growth. Wesley's work ethic game is strong. He's also the CEO of CUBIO Innovation, also located in Houston, Texas. CUBIO is a healthcare incubator and a co-working space that facilitates networking and collaboration in the USA and in China. I have known Wesley for a little over a year now. He's been a guide and a business collaborator with me since we are both passionate about entrepreneurship in tech and life sciences. He understands the value he brings and is always available to answer questions and share his wisdom and experiences. Wesley, welcome to Vision 2222 podcast, and we are thrilled to have you on.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank everyone for having me.
So I want to start off with discussing the future of work. We have 24 hours in a day, and time is one of our most precious resources. Looking at your professional journey, you created softwares in the past, simplify and streamline processes, either to save time or money or both. You created a real estate management software and a product test program for Staples. So first, can you tell us how you identified problems like these and created these software solutions for sale? And second part of the question is looking into the future, what work productivity tools, it can be new software or new apps, do you predict we will be using in the next 10 years? Or maybe you think that businesses will eventually engage more in a virtual reality, such as the metaverse, where all the productivity tools are already there and available.
Sure. So a little bit about myself. I started out programming at a young age, still in my teens. But when it came to really being able to identify problems that needed a solution, in the beginning, I really wasn't good at it because I used to write, when I wrote the real estate program, I was writing because I was more excited about creating the technology than actually solving the problem. But as time went on, even while I was writing that, I began to learn and understand that the needs of the individual and the struggles and the pain points they were running into. And I had to learn how to place the needs and the feedback of those that I was either developing software or hardware for. I needed to really put that as the number one priority of the reason why I was writing this. So when I was writing this it was a small program actually. It took me I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks to build, and then, a few more weeks to perfect. For Staples, it was really listening to the pain points that they were running into and the problems. And to me, it was so simple of a program, but to them, it was $150,000, $200,000 mistake they kept making. And as a developer at that time, I didn't take the seriousness of their pain as much as I should have, but I did. And I learned over the years to just be a very, very good listener and to be able to empathize what they go through. In regards to the future and productivity, software tools, because I'm a heavy into tech, I love tech. I still realize and believe that we're always going to be human beings. Yes, we have no other choice. But at the core of who we are, we need to connect. And I do feel that there's part of the software industry that is understanding this. And so the types of tools that I foresee in the future are going to be tools that are not only helping us to be more efficient, but they are also including who we are as people and how we live our whole day, right? So one of these software tools that I am mentoring on is kind of introducing the work-life balance and goals that are both centered on what they do at work and also centered on what they do at home, and they're combined so that this person isn't necessarily separating their home life from their work life. So that's what I foresee regarding productivity tools in the future. I think we're going to get smarter at it and consider the human being in us and how that always has to be considered.
Yes, I think efficiency is definitely one of the top things that we look for. But with COVID and a lot of companies moving to working from home, do you believe that eventually every single one of us will be working either online or in some sort of a virtual reality?
That's a very good question and very interesting. There are many companies that are fine with working remotely. And I some of my staff works remotely, and I've never met them, never seen them, except through Zoom. But I do see specifically at CUBIO, I've seen our efficiency grow significantly after COVID, downgraded quite considerably. I started having people come into the office, and though they struggled with it, they have come to me and said, Wes, our efficiency coming together and seeing each other and working in the same environment has increase their efficiency, but not only that, their joy level of what they're doing. And now they feel part of a much more greater plan, opposed to being in a silo and just being a workhorse, so to speak. But I think you're going to see, in my opinion, you're going to see companies are going to begin to set apart that offer both and encourage both, opposed to it just being one or the other.
And you are currently in Houston. Many of our listeners may not know that Houston has one of the largest medical centers in the world and is a large emerging market for life sciences and MedTech startups. In fact, the Texas Medical Center will soon have a 37-acre life science campus with the goal to unite the best minds in medicine and product commercialization. So how do you predict this will change Houston's medical center as a startup hub in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think that eventually Houston will become the land of startup unicorns? Or do you think that there's going to be extreme competition for funding that will deter people from actually starting companies?
So right now, we are foreseeing Houston being a life science hub. It is one of the largest and most innovative life science and health technology centers in regards to medical centers in the US, but also in the world. And because of, one of them being, MD Anderson, which focuses on cancer, we have thousands of people that come in from all over the world for cancer treatment. I think the past 3 to 5 years, as the oil and gas industry has reduced its significance in Houston and around just because of the cost of oil and other parts of the world are also providing great oil resources, Houston has been awakened that, hey, we have a very prominent medical center. CUBIO recently joined the partnership with Greater Houston Partnerships, which focuses on many different industries in Houston, but one of the industries they have focusing on right now that is is the health, and the medical and the life science industry. And probably half of CUBIO's customers, tenants that are in our biotech lab are from outside of Houston. And the reason why they're coming to Houston is because of the huge amount of human resources in the medical field that far outweighs most medical centers in the US. And so it's been a huge attraction. Plus, the cost of space is a whole lot less expensive. And the amount of room that is available is just far greater. We have a company that just signed a new lease with us for our biotech lab from California. And I was talking to the CEO, and he says, you could charge me whatever you want to charge me, because to be honest with you, whatever you charge me is going to be a whole lot less expensive than what he's paying. And they know they will always have access to men and women in the medical field to hire as employees. Sorry, that was probably a little bit longer answer than you asked.
Let me interrupt for just a moment.
Sure.
That's a real awesome thing to hear. I often preach that sort of thing to people, that we have this enormous resource in Houston and it's under-tapped, and that even with the recent increases in cost of living and other things in Houston, it's still a bargain compared to the main bio hubs that are elsewhere. But one of the things that I have heard people talk about is a shortage of wet lab space. Do you see a change in that? Are we going to start seeing more locations where companies can come in and have their wet labs so they can continue with their own in-house research?
Yes. So that's funny. Yes, there is a huge shortage. I launched our wet lab space end of February, early March. And this past week, I just turned our whole common area, which we had seating and it's our front office. I turned that into a wet lab space because this company needed more space. And
right.
I'm talking to our investors and they go, do you have any more room to bring in new people? I go, no. And so at the end of last year, we were in a 6th floor of where the MD Anderson used to be. We had a quarter of that space. Now we have half, and we're going to have 3/4 probably by the end of this year. And hopefully the whole 6th floor by mid next year, going into the 5th floor. But this is a huge need. There's another large company, Makerspace, that's also developing some wet lab space. So you're definitely going to see a huge increase in the availability.
This is music to my ears, Wes. I know that it's a little bit of Amanda, a little bit of a distraction from what you were talking about, but let me hand it back to you.
Sure. So thank you, Wes. I want to now look at the future of entrepreneurship globally. So you have traveled extensively in your career and you were successful, you had a good job, a comfortable life. And there's a story that I heard where you returned to your village in Nigeria where you spent your childhood. And going back after 20 years or more changed your perspective on the purpose of your life. You wanted to make an impact on communities that were ready for change. So we would like to hear more about what do you see as the spirit of innovation in Nigeria right now? What sort of trends in technology or digital innovation or biotech, MedTech are you seeing? And to expand the conversation a little bit more, are there other countries besides Nigeria within Africa that are really developing their way in innovation?
Yes. So you asked a lot of questions there. But they're good questions. So yeah, our village, I grew up a city that was probably 2 hours from our village, but we were in our village often. And when I'd gone back, I was 14 when I was there, and I went back when I was 43 or so. And I began to see technology booming, which was just weird for me. It was weird, but it was exciting because I absolutely love technology. But there were certain things that were missing or hadn't improved in 20-something years, which was electricity, clean water, education, and medical resources. And I was very conscience stricken because my dad's also an engineer, a ton of engineers from that village and doctors. And I says, if I have anything to do with technology, it's got to have a much deeper purpose than just entertainment of people's lives, so to speak. And so purpose, as you and I have talked about in the past, I would say, Nigeria and many other African countries, for 1,000 different reasons, are going through major transitions as the older generation is kind of, I don't want to use a harsh word, but they are retiring and stepping out of running the countries. And the younger generation is far more focused on having that spirit of innovation and change and impact, right? They're considering how and what they build, how will it improve, which is good, because when you've been in a situation where you've seen so many resources gone to waste, your initial desire is to bring change, and better change for not just yourself, but for everyone. There's a greater purpose than just financial improvement of my life, its impact. So I see that in Nigeria, I see that in Ghana, I see that in South Africa, see that a lot in Kenya. There's some startups that I collaborate with in Kenya. You're going to see this need, or not this need, but you're going to see this progress begin to spring up, as it already is, for many of the African countries when it comes to not necessarily consumer tech, but more so technology that is geared to improve the quality of life when it comes to electricity, water, even medical types of. So I'm working with some doctors and some medical startups that are trying to build technology that is going to impact the lives of millions of people in Africa and around the world, but specifically in Africa to start. We're also working with a very large life science company that is beginning to penetrate Africa. And their goal is to provide some really good standards in education in all of Africa for all of their medical personnel. So I would say it is, when I look at innovation in Africa, I'm looking at it from a technology standpoint that improves quality of life, but not just consumer tech, but then also I'm looking at the MedTech side of providing medical and biotech innovation.
And the need is there for sure.
Yes,
So
the need is there. Yes, huge need.
You've also worked with startups internationally, as you mentioned. Some are also located in China. What sort of technology and problems are being addressed with those businesses, if you can share any? And I'm just curious if there's a difference in the approach to entrepreneurship in China versus the USA. What do you think is the future of this sort of cross-border collaboration and investment between USA and China look like?
Sure. So let me focus on a few parts. One, I'll focus on the life sciences because I had to do a lot of. CUBIO is originally a Chinese company, and they wanted me to be their CEO for a few reasons. One being they were trying to figure out their business model, and because I had run Headway and Fruition Tech Labs, it kind of made a fit. So I did my own personal research before I took the job for about 5-6 months. And what I realized was the average Chinese national, their income over the past 20, 30 years is, I think it grew by 40 something times as much as what they were making. So all of a sudden they have, well, not all of a sudden, but in a short period of time, they have access to disposable income to purchase, right? And especially when it came to healthcare, now they can start affording a lot of the healthcare offerings that are out there. And so, China is almost 4 times the size of the US. And medical innovation is always in great demand, and technology innovation is always in great demand. But now you have a country that has significantly grown in its citizens being able to afford technology and healthcare, and the demand is astronomical. If the demand is pretty large in the US, you can imagine what it's like in China now. So their challenge is finding the right businesses, the right innovation that could really do well. In many cases, that is purpose-driven, but really can support the need. So the need far outweighs the speed of innovation that is being launched in China. So when you're looking at entrepreneurship in China versus the US, they're still running through a lot of challenges through the development process or the registration process of entrepreneurship. versus the US, you can run out and you can get your company registered, in a week or two. In China, it just takes a whole lot longer. The thing about it, though, the Chinese, between the government and private institutions that work together with the government, they're constantly throwing millions and millions and millions and millions of US dollars away or at companies to come in and launch, just because the country and its people have not caught up to be able to supply the demand that is needed. And so they're always offering money to startups and other companies to come to China and build, and they'll protect their IP and they'll do all these great things. But obviously, because of certain things that we hear on the media, whether they're true or not, this is a hindrance. And one of the very large, well-known, I call it the Harvard of industrial parks in China. They're just everyone in China knows about them. And I have companies from outside of China that are really trying to get in there because they know they're just high quality. Over the past 30 years, they've lost tons of money because foreigners will come in there, start their business, and if things don't work out based on what they've done, they just walk away and they leave everything, in the hands of that industrial park, and they're stuck. But they provide everything. They provide everything from free living to free space to all the support they can give you if you are qualified and you have a valid, innovative product or product design.
So it looks like the funding or the resources are there. It's just actually getting that product to match the need and then getting it to market.
Yes, the funding is there, the support is there, and we may talk about this, we may not. To me, it always goes back to the people, right? It always goes back to the person or people that are running the company, whether they're in the US or anywhere in the world. Success is typically built on character.
And so you predict, I believe in the future, there will definitely be a lot more of this sort of collaboration between the US and China.
Yes.
Types of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a huge need right now. For example, for the US and a US entrepreneur looking to enter China, they got to face the challenges of the stigma China has. For China, bringing in, US companies or any companies outside of China, they have to face the challenge of someone quitting today, walking away when China has poured, millions of dollars into your business, and you haven't. Put it this way, you shouldn't have any reason not to succeed because of what they provide. If you don't succeed, it's typically because you didn't do your job. And so this is the problem that China has to face with companies starting, not doing their due diligence, and then walking away scot-free. Both are challenged with those obstacles.
So do you serve as a kind of cultural translator to help companies go into China for the right reasons and help the people who are running it in China know how to vet the candidates?
Yes, we do. And so now I'm working with one of the large organizations to come up with it's kind of like a incubation process, but it's more of a cultural incubation. So they get to visit China and understand how things run, business ethics, and so on and so forth, so that they're prepared mentally. The interesting part is they don't require you to live in China, which I would probably say you need to commit, because they don't require you to live in China, but I would probably say you need to commit yourself to live in China at least 2 to 3 years if they're going to invest, several $1 million, so you can see that it succeed. But they provide all the provisions that you would need, even where you would live, so that you have all the amenities that you're typically used to in the Western world. But yes, we do provide a lot of that.
That's an awesome term you just used there, cultural incubation. That seems like a jumping off point for a lot of different discussion, and it goes to several of the things you've talked about already. I'm going to save further questions, though, for a little later.
Sure.
So switching a topic a little bit, was a big part of your message to entrepreneurs is knowing your value and understanding what do you bring to the table. In other words, what is your why? Simon Sinek has published a very well-known book. It's called Start With Why. To describe it in one sentence is, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So what do you think? How can a person with a business idea go about finding out what is their why? What questions should we ask to get to that why? And how can answering that why question translate to a viable business model?
Okay. Wow, that's a good question. All your questions are really good, but I have to weigh how much do I say, how much don't I say. So yeah, I watch that video at least once or twice a month, and I have every entrepreneur I work with watch it. I build an early adopter. We do an early adopter, a deep dive in early adopter reports based on Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And so I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I talk about the value of your why and how you can build a competitive fingerprint based on your why, right? And I know your question is, how can a person, with an idea go about finding out their why? And there's a few things I suggest they do. One is I have them write a vision story, and the vision story, which I'll talk about in a second, but then the other story I have them write is a story on why they started this business. And so I like them to go as far back as possible. It could be a day that they ran into a situation, could be 20 years ago, but what events took place in their life that this became something that they felt they had to address. So I have them write that story, and I tell them don't go more than a page but I want you to think through as far back as you can remember what instances or events went in your life and why does this problem bother you? And when they write that, it helps them bring to the surface why this keeps them up at night. And the other thing is that I try to find out regarding their passion level, how close is it to a 10 or 11, right? I'm going 1 to 10, and some people know, Wes, it's a 10 or it's 11 or it's a 15, because many times they'll come to me with many, many ideas that they want to launch, and I'll find out which one is the one they're most passionate about. And sometimes they don't even divulge that to me. And I ask them, is this it? Or is there one other one that you haven't mentioned? Especially if I don't see any of them are a 10, and then this one will pop out of nowhere. But I have them write that story, then also have them do a vision story. And I says, in this vision story, I want 3 sections, and it can't be more than 2 pages. The first section is, I want you to write out a fictional character, unless you really have a real life character, that's fine. I want to know everything about this human being, their name, their background, their age, where they live, their race, everything. I want to know everything about this person. And then they come in contact with your idea, your solution, your business. And a certain number of things take place and interactions. And so what that does, it helps identify this person they're trying to impact. And then they come in contact with them. It kind of provides what takes place. What does that company, or what does your idea provide to this human being, and how does that interaction look like? And then the third stage is, how has that person's life been impacted, right? And so as they're writing this story, we can get an idea of who that person is, what takes place with them and your idea or your product or your service, and how that person changes, right? And that provides clarity and vision on what you're trying to accomplish, and combined with your story on why you're passionate about this, helps them develop what I call the beginnings of a purpose-driven plan, and many, many other things regarding their business foundation.
So this resonates very well with me, because I'm writing fiction. And when you write a novel, you need to think about who's your reader and build that portrait of a reader. Who are they? What do they do? Why would they be interested in this topic? And why would they be interested in your writing? Why would they read it? Why would they spend time? So this is a very similar exercise, I think, that you're describing, Wes. Yeah. And also about the why, starting with why, that also brings the notion of, there's a Japanese term, it's a diagram, it's called ikigai, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, but if you imagine 4 circles, right? 4 circles, and you need to find the intersection, what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. And within that, the intersection of these 4, you find your why, your calling, your sweet spot. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I agree. When people talk about vocation, I have them think about what that word means, and it's Latin for your calling. And so we start having conversations regarding everyone has this calling for career purpose in generating money to sustain their lives, and really finding out what that is and begin to focus on that as your starting point, opposed to just, as we're driven in society to get the degree, get a job, make a certain amount of money so you can have a certain type of lifestyle. And then obviously you get into your 40s and you realize, I don't care about this lifestyle. I need something much more fulfilling.
So you see that connection between purpose-driven life and purpose-driven business. And when people talk about work-life balance, I think we can't really separate the two. And business is part of your life, work is part of your life, work-life business, work-life balance. What is that balance? It's who you are. It's what you do. It's what you're good at. It's what drives you. So what do you think the connection is between purpose-driven life and purpose-driven business?
So you pretty much answered it, but yes, I think it's the one. I spent a year with St. Thomas University here in Houston, and I was working with the dean of the entrepreneurship department, and he's a bit older than me. And when I was done, he says, Wes, I don't know my purpose, and I enjoy what I'm doing, but when I look at my purpose in the long term and short term of life, I feel like I'm just allowing life to carry me along. And so we spent probably 2 months just weekly going through understanding your purpose, which I have them do a value test and find out what things do they value most about life and who they are. And every human being has those things that are human-centric, and learning what they are, and now learning how to begin to build on those things with the types of career, types of jobs, even the types of people you want to surround yourself with. And even though people may have different values, they're not bad values. It's just they're not aligned with yours. And when you find that type of alignment with your core values in life, your calling as far as work, the types of people you want to connect with that align with your values, that your purpose now begins to become much more defined and refined. In everything you do, you're thinking, and the people you meet and the people you connect with or you're doing business with, because you guys are aligned in values, that the purpose becomes a whole lot more strong. You're doing things because there's a deeper purpose behind it. And part of that purpose is tied to the things that you value. I did a whole thing behind this in order to help people define their purpose by going back to what they value. But this is another discussion.
No, this is fundamental, right? It's fundamental to who we are and what we do. Yeah. What important trends do you see? So talking about, but we just talked about passion and value. If you look at humanity as a whole, what trends do you see today in business and technology and society, the trends that change us as humans? And what else is on the horizon? What makes you say, oh, this is so interesting, this is so amazing, I just want to see how it develops in the future?
Wow. So if you ever, and maybe you've done this already, if you ever get time to just type in, on Google, purpose-driven companies, you'll see a huge amount of articles. Especially Forbes has put out countless articles on purpose-driven, which shocked me. And the types of companies that are purpose-driven and the value they bring, not only to the employees, but to their customers, to their partners, and even to their competitors. And so when I do my talks on the types of businesses that I think and the trends that you're mentioning that are going to grow and progress, I think it's purpose-driven companies are the ones you're going to see that are going to continue to grow, but they're going to be sustained for a very long period of time because their purpose is based on the human being and the value they place on their employees, the value they place on their customers, and the value they place on the people that they partner with, and even how they view their competitors. Right now, that is, and there's reasons behind it that I did a little bit of research why that is not prominent in our society. But what statistics are showing is that those types of businesses are long lasting because they're built on a very strong purpose-driven foundation. And it's hard to shake them. And
I just did a quick Google search and I saw IKEA, Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and Patagonia. Those are just some of the top three.
Costco's one, Southwest Airlines, Airbnb, and I could tell you stories about all of them. But Costco, geez, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, their average wage was about $20 an hour. And the stockholders didn't like that. Senior management says, no, we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. And everybody I know that worked at Costco, the majority of people all tell me all great things. And because they feel they're more than a number, they're a human being. And when you have people that are running companies that place value on people over profits, these companies, the purpose-driven companies, end up being the most profitable. Employees love them. Customers are loyal even when they make major mistakes. And it's just so many incredible things. So I think in the trend, what we're going to begin to see, because these companies are beginning to make an impact and an impression, right? Chick-fil-A is known as, it became the #1 customer service company in the United States. Southwest Airlines says we are a customer service company that happens to just fly airplanes, right? Mindset, purpose, but the hope and the prayer is that we begin to see this trend grow. It's almost inevitable, right? The millennials and the generation after them demand a greater meaning than just work. And even though it's probably gone way to the other side, it's going to come back as they begin to see that, wow, the generation before me really is becoming much more purposeful. That is a value these guys hold, and being able to provide that value to them is going to be important.
Amazing. Thank you, Wes. And then you still see humans in the middle, right? So it's about who we are. It's about how do we treat each other? How do we find that purpose? And how do we serve humans in the end? Even with all the advent of technologies and artificial intelligence, for example, I've been amazed to learn recently that artificial intelligence actually is disrupting art more than it disrupts like blue-collar jobs. And paintings and music and songs. There are already a lot of examples of AI created art, and it starts to displace human artists, which is very, very interesting trend that nobody expected 5 years ago. So how do you see us humans in that perspective, from that trend, incorporating all these different technologies, including artificial intelligence, in all areas of our lives? And where do you think it will go in the future? 50 years, 100 years, maybe 200 years by year 2022 that we're focusing on? And will humanity even survive that long?
Yes. How long humanity will survive? I don't know, right? I don't think any of us knows. So I'm a huge component for AI, right? Because I think it can remove some human error where necessary, and it can improve efficiencies where necessary. But as a programmer it's been 40 years, I never foresee it changing taking over the human mind. The human mind is so infinite. I just never see that taking place. And there's a component to human beings, which, is our spiritual side, or where we're able to empathize. And we know a lot of the decisions we make are based on our emotions, tied in with logic. So AI is pretty much it's all logic, not pretty much. That's all it is. It's logic, but there's no empathy, or there's no emotion in there for it to make the best decision. And so this is where what we will see, though, because we do evolve well, humans in regards to their careers and their jobs, it will change on what they need to, I think, study and pursue as a career. But there's always going to be a need. There's just always going to be a need. And so one of the industries I was in, it was called machine vision for many, many years. And we were able to program computers to detect certain things. But no matter how well we programmed it, and this technology is over 30 years old now, probably 40, no matter how well we did, if we introduced something new, the computer wouldn't know what to do. Or even something at a slightly different, you could show a 2-year-old a picture of a car on a piece of paper, and the 2-year-old would know that's a car. And you could even do a horrible job drawing it. A computer is going to look at it and go, I have no idea what that is. And it's just so many variables there for computers to get to where human beings are. And again, I'm a component for AI, but I realize its value, but with no fear of it, replacing who we are as human beings.
This is where we take you into an area where we ask you to jump off into the unknown and imagine. And so imagine you are taking a trip into the future. Even give us an opinion on whether time travel is possible, and well, if it is, whether you can only travel forward or backward or both ways. And then once you've given us some ideas on that, then tell us, if you had the opportunity to take just one trip, either backward or forward in time, where would you go, or when would you go, or what person would you want to meet and why? So starting off, it's talk about time travel.
Okay. Yeah, that's funny you asked that question. I was thinking about it a couple of days ago. I don't know why. But regarding time travel, do I think it's possible? I would say no. I wish it was, but I would say no for many different reasons. I do think people are able to, or not people, but technology will come to a place where we will be able to see in the past, but not see in the future. And there's reasons why I believe that regarding the Earth's magnetic forces, and because of that, events are able to be recorded, right? We were able to record video and sound on magnetic tape. And there's a long reason why I believe that, why that may take place in the future, where someone has been able to replay what has taken place in the past based on just what is out there, similar to like radio waves or whatever. If I was to take a trip, I guess I thought about that question too, and it was a very tricky question because I want to go to both forward and backward. But I would probably say I would go forward, probably 100 years from now. And the reason being is technology, I say this a lot, technology is many times becomes the key focus. And it begins to, when we're focused on technology, and all the startups I work with, I tell them the technology becomes their focus and not the people. And so a lot of great technology has been built, and the priority has been, as time goes on, this is going to be awesome. It's going to do all these great things. It's going to be fantastic. Yeah, it's going to help people. Man, you can't imagine what we're going to do and what we're going to build and how we're going to improve. And then the people are slowly begin to be forgotten. So I would want to go in the future 100 years and look back and say, okay, what could we have done differently? Looking at how the technology was built and how it influenced or made impact in the right way, but what are some of the flaws that caused, and this is the challenge with new technology, when it's not well thought out regarding the interaction with the human being, it creates new problems and new flaws, or begins to expose new flaws in our human nature. And that is, my opinion, primarily because we began to lose sight of the human being we're building this for, and it became all based on the tech. So when I'm meeting with these companies, I says, listen, your technology is only the vehicle. It's only the vehicle that you're utilizing to deliver your value. And if you put the technology as the value and not the vehicle, you have displaced its priority. And so 100 years from now, it would have been really good to go back and says, okay, what technology or areas of technology have we built and designed and implemented where we lost sight of the people we were building this for, so that we can go back and correct it.
Really, really cool. I love that. Well, why don't we just give you a bonus and say, okay, you want to be able to go into the past too, what time. I always have a hard time saying, where do you want to go in the past? Because it's a when do you want to go into the past? But tell us about that.
Yeah, if I was to go to in the past, I would go to the time, and I thought about it this morning when I think it was Orville and Wilbur, the Wright brothers, were developing an airplane. And I don't know why Simon Sinek uses that analogy in his video, but I think of the birth of really significant innovation and the importance it has on us today. And it would help us, for me, it would help me understand a little bit better how these men and women, not just them, but even many, many others, what did they do to think totally outside the box, right? Our biggest challenge as innovators are the limitations we place on ourselves of developing something that no one else has done. And the reason why I started Fruition Tech Labs, that's now Headway, 8 years ago, is because I realized there are a trillion new ideas out there. And because people put limitations on what can be done or what they're able to do, they kill the idea before even trying. And so I would want to go back and probably gather all these stories and what made these men, what inspired these men and women to think totally outside of the norm. I mean, I know people have talked about crazy things, but they actually succeeded. And I would bring those stories back after having one-on-one conversations and hopefully utilize that to inspire many more. I call them idea generators to innovate.
This desire to understand and nurture the innovative spirit, innovative habits, ways of thinking outside the box, of tying discovery into innovation. This seems to really permeate your whole life right now. And I think it's awesome to listen to you describe your thoughts and the ways you really want to help people. The human-centric approach that you take is to a person who maybe just looked at your resume, wouldn't necessarily occur to them because we tend to think of tech innovators as being more about the tech, but you've really turned that on its head. And a lot of the things you're doing with cultural incubation, with finding ways to help people discover their own purposes and so forth, on the surface, it's at odds with the thoughts of future speak, but it's really consistent with some of the other things, some of the other people we've had in our podcast, really turning around and looking at human beings and what our potential is. What I'm wondering is, we're sort of to the close of this experience with you, and it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate your sharing with us. If you could say a couple of sentences about what you've talked about with us, thoughts you would like to leave an audience with, what would you say as your kind of encapsulation statement?
I guess to those that are idea generators, those that have an idea that they have pondered, I think almost everyone on the planet is inspired by some new innovative idea, whether it's in technology or not. I think as human beings, at the core of who we are, we want to leave an impact, right? We want to bring change. We want to leave a legacy. We want to be known for something that we've contributed, in our last days on the planet. I would suggest that the time is now. Whether you start slow or fast, the time is now. Never wait. For me, I started late. And this is, almost 9 years ago. My wife says, "Hey, you're going to be 50 soon." So I'm in my late 50s. And she says, "You better start now." And I was the gentleman that was afraid to jump off a cliff, so to speak, and take any risks. As an engineer and the family I grew up, it was, okay, only calculated risk, never try anything that could, cause you deep emotional struggle. But knowing what I went through the first many years as an entrepreneur and coming out on this side, I would do it all over again.
Awesome. Would you like to share some of the links or other places where people could go for resources to pursue some of these ideas that we've shared further after they've finished listening to the podcast?
Sure. Yeah, our website is headwayidealabs.io. And so that's just one word, headwayidealabs.io. And the MedTech Biotech is CUBIO Innovation, and that's CUBIO innovation.com.
Super.
And those are two links. And you can also go to my LinkedIn, which is Wesley Okeke, Okeke, where we probably post a lot more of some of the events I speak at and some of the things I talk about and some of the articles. But yes, that's probably the best way if anyone's eager to reach out. I'm always, I always have a listening ear, as busy as things can be. I always have a listening ear to a new idea that I know is driving someone crazy because they're passionate to get it started.
Well, maybe I'll be getting in touch with you because I think some of the things you're doing are very, very cool. Anybody else have any further comment before we close out this episode?
No, thank you so much, Wes, for being on this podcast. It was really enlightening conversation.
I'd like to thank you as well. Great conversation, great topics, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you all as well, very much. Always appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Vision 2222. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Please also comment, and we'll do our best to respond.